Hey everybody, this is Romeo and Juliet, Act 1 vocabulary. Please make sure that you have your notes out and ready to go. So our first word is conspicuous, which appears on page 49 in the text. The definition for conspicuous is easily seen or noticed. So if you are eating an ice cream cone that is melting all over your hands in the middle of class, you are being conspicuous, as is the Cookie Monster over there in the corner. An antonym for conspicuous is inconspicuous, and another one would be concealed. And then a synonym, or a word that means the same thing, would be visible. So if you are conspicuous, you are visible, unlike Batman, who is supposed to be sneaky. Okay, so the part of speech for conspicuous is an adjective. You would want to use it to describe a person or thing. And here is an example of a sentence. Even though he tried to be as secretive as possible, the Cookie Monster was pretty conspicuous as he munched noisily on the sweet treats. Please take as much time as you need to on this slide before moving to the next one. If it's necessary, go ahead and pause or replay so that you can get all of the information that you need. Okay, so our second word for Act 1 vocabulary is oppressive, which appears on page 51. And if you've ever seen the movie Brave, you know that that is Merida right there, who is the protagonist of the story. The definition for oppressive is burdensome or distressing. So in this movie, Merida thinks that the fact that her mother is making her choose a suitor, and they're pretty wimpy looking suitors, she thinks that that is oppressive. An antonym would be liberating or relaxing. So laying on a beach with a Coca-Cola reading a book would be the opposite of oppressive. And a synonym would be overwhelming. So some people might consider homework oppressive. Some people might consider a 100-degree day to be oppressive because of the heat. And the part of speech for oppressive is adjective. Again, you would use it to describe a thing or a person. Okay, here's an example. Although Merida is a princess, she feels that having to choose a suitor and behave like a lady is very oppressive, so she defies her mother. You might also hear of a lot of different types of governments as being oppressive. Okay, the third word for Act 1, and again pause if you need to before moving on, is chastity, which is on page 33 of Act 1. The definition for chastity is virginity, which is why you see a nun cartoon pictured over in the corner here. So the opposite of virginity is fornication, which everyone probably knows what that means. If not, then look it up. And the synonym for chastity is purity. Okay, a part of speech would be a noun. Chastity is a thing, but it's an idea noun. It's not something that you can hold in your hand. And using it in a sentence, people who live a life of chastity, unlike Charlie Sheen, have fewer STDs because they are pure. Obviously, as you learned in health class, it's harder to obtain an STD if you are not engaging in sexual activity. Alright, word 4, malicious. This is on page 29. The definition for malicious is spiteful. This lady over here is from Sleeping Beauty. Her name is Maleficent. She's like the evil witch lady in that movie. You know, every Disney movie has to have an evil witch person. And she is spiteful towards Sleeping Beauty. So an antonym is friendly, as you can see. Even though she has sort of a crooked smile on, she doesn't look very friendly. A synonym is hateful. And the part of speech is adjective. Again, you would use it to describe a person or a thing. Okay, so for a sentence, you could say, Maleficent, the evil lady, maliciously casts a sleeping spell on Sleeping Beauty. And you even got some alliteration in there for a bonus. Maleficent, maliciously, sleeping spell on Sleeping Beauty. So if we're thinking about other things that could be malicious, any sort of terrorist attack would obviously be an example of that. You might also think about people who want revenge as being malicious people. Some of your evil villains are very malicious. Okay, and then finally we have perpetuate, which appears a couple different places in the text, page 17 and 25. And hopefully all of you have seen Finding Nemo. That's Dory over there. So the definition for perpetuate is to keep the cycle going. If something is perpetual, it is continual. So the opposite, an antonym, would be to prevent. So obviously a stop sign would prevent you from continuing on. You would have to stop before the traffic would be able to perpetuate. And then a synonym, a word that means the same thing, would be continue. So if you just picture a dog perpetually chasing its own tail, that's an example of perpetuate. Now this one is a verb, okay, but I want you to be aware that perpetual is a form of this word and it is an adjective. So as a verb, something would perpetuate. But as an adjective, you would use perpetual to describe a person or a thing. Okay, a sentence. In Finding Nemo, Dory perpetuates Marlin's frustrations by being perpetually forgetful. You got 2 for 1 right there. You could say that the Earth perpetually spins on its axis, the Moon perpetually orbits the Earth, and the Earth perpetually orbits the Sun. And that's all for your Act 1 vocabulary. So, the, what do you want to call it, phrase that you need to know for class tomorrow to prove that you actually did these notes and that you paid attention to the lovely Act 1 vocabulary is nincompoop. Nincompoop. That's N-I-N-C-O-M-P-O-O-P. Nincompoop. So you need to have that written down and look up the definition for it. And we will see you tomorrow in class. Have a good night.